watching the show with me, so we need that. Now, the BMW 3 Series has impressed us quite a bit in terms of its ride and handling. In fact, it is one of the best 3 Series that you can find. But Jaguars are also known to make driver-focused cars, and in fact, they have just updated the XE with the latest in tech, but priced lower than the BMW 3 Series. So does that make it a better buy? Well, it's time to find out.
This is the new BMW 3 Series, and it now has a new feather in its hat. Last December, it won the Premium Car Award by the ICOT, the Indian Car of the Year jury panel. Now, I gave it top scores because the 330i M Sport that you see here impressed me to a different level. The way it drives, the kind of driving dynamics that it has, it is easily the best driver's car in this segment. Now, the 330i M Sport is also the 3 Series to buy if you are out in the market looking for one, because this is the new age representation of everything that you've heard and loved about the 3 Series. Now, a lot has been spoken about it, a lot has been written about it, a lot has been talked about it, and everything points to its driving dynamics. That is just how good it is. But around the same time that it won the award, the Jaguar XE, which came out in 2015, was given its midlife makeover. It looks better now, has a ton of more features. So does that all sum up to clawback at the 3 Series? Now that is something that we're here to find out. Let us begin with the Jaguar XE. Its new design gives it sleeker, frowning headlights, larger headlamps, an even larger grille, and a more sculpted chin. At the rear, things get even more interesting. The taillights are sleeker, the Captain Hook detailing looks more detailed, the bumper gets a sportier appearance, and the twin exhaust pipes almost makes this car look like the F-Type or an SVR when viewed from the rear and in this color. In fact, all these updates aim to make the Jaguar appear sportier than ever, and it works. Park the old and the new XE next to each other, and the latter looks like it's lost a lot of weight. Astonishingly, this is a facelift and not a generation change, so full marks to the designers for achieving this. What is a generation change though is the new 3 Series, and it looks the part. The more I look at it, the more I fall for it. It looks like a born athlete, and that low-slung stance instantly establishes it as a sports sedan even before you get to the complex detailing of its facial elements. The M Sport garnish adds further oomph to the design. Both the cars get LED headlights, but the DRL signature looks a tad bit better on the Jaguar, I think. I even like the design of the 17-inch wheels on the Jag, but the 18-inchers on the BMW look better, and as we found out through the course of this test, have very little impact on the ride quality compared to the XE. Choose either of these cars and you are bound to get noticed, but the Jaguar has a better chance of turning more heads. If I wanted to flaunt the car that I was driving, I would love to arrive in this, the XE, in this very shade. The red and black just looks beautiful. Yes, I do have a thing for red and black, but just imagine this car in a white or a grey or a black. It just doesn't hit the nail on the head. Unfortunately, that's the only color palette that's available for the 3 Series. Think of this in a blue, one of those M blues, and this car would have my money. In terms of the dimensions, the 3 Series, despite appearing more ground-hugging, sits taller than the XE. It also isn't as wide, but looks more wide-bodied thanks to its sculpting. It is longer though, and sits on a 16mm longer wheelbase, giving it a roomier cabin than the XE. Speaking of the cabins, let us begin with what the XE has to offer. Now, when this car arrived to us for a test, I did take out a few people out on a drive, and the first thing they asked me is, what is special inside this cabin? Is there any party trick, some feature that is worth talking about? And unfortunately, I couldn't talk much about it at all. But credit where it's due, the materials, they now are much better than what we saw previously on the XE. It is much better to touch and feel, much better put together. Everything is nicely put together. It still lacks that ultimate finish that you will get in some of the German cars, especially its rival right now, but then I like this cabin. The XE gets wireless charging, and the audio unit sounds a tad bit better too. In terms of the infotainment, the iDrive in the BMW is far more intuitive to use, but the wireless Apple CarPlay was a bit iffy on our test car. The iDrive also has the gesture control trick up its sleeve to entertain your co-passengers. Now, both the cars get a sunroof only on the front side of the seats. However, the aperture is larger in the XE. Despite that, this is the cabin that feels roomier. Not only because of the brighter colors, but also because it is actually roomy. The kind of foot space that you get, the knee room that you get at the front is much better than what you get in the XC. And the dashboard again is typically laid out in the driver-centric BMW fashion, which is what I like. Materials, again, hard to find faults with. Everything is top-notch, very nicely put together. The design is something that is a bit polarizing, especially if you are upgrading from a BMW. You might see a lot of familiarity between this and what we've seen in the past. However, this is still littered with new age equipment, new age switches, new age materials, and all of that comes nicely together. That's what I like about this cabin. The 3 Series also has a better legroom, making it the better car of the two for those who are driven around. But these are drivers' cars at the end of the day, so behind the wheel is where they excite the most. Their engine specs are quite closely matched, and so are the safety features that these cars offer. The XC now gets a lane departure warning and a lane keep assistant, but activating the latter stiffens up the steering a bit much for my liking. We have seen more intuitive systems in BMWs, but sadly, the India Spec 3 Series doesn't get them.
Well, it certainly is a very difficult choice to figure out whether these cars look good in terms of design or how they treat you inside the car. We'll just have to wait. After this quick break, we'll tell you how. Now, just before we headed into this break, we did tell you how the 3 Series and the XC match up in terms of design and equipment. And now it's time to find out just how they are to drive.
Moving on to the driving bits, these cars are very closely matched on their specs, but their characters are quite different from each other. There's a nice little pull to the startup sound of this engine, and I really like it. After all, they got a fairly nice soundtrack of the 4-cylinder engine that powers the F-Type now. So I'm glad that some of those acoustics have actually made their way into the XC as well. Even when you're driving at higher revs, there's this nice humming background score to your drive, and I quite like it. The BMW sounds a tad bit better though. Some of that sound seems synthesized, but it sets the mood right. You'll spot a P250 badge on the boot of this car, and that refers to the power output, the 250 PS power output of this engine. And that's quite a good brag for this particular category of car. 250 horses is quite good, and also is noticeable when you drive the car. The engine feels nice and brisk. I am a little annoyed with its over-eager nature. It tends to lunge forward even at city speeds, and that's something that I really don't like. I want it to be a little calmer at city speeds. Of course, moving into the eco mode does sort that, but then, yeah, I like it to be a little calmer. It's not. But out on the highway, you will like the performance. The engine, the power, the torque, everything seems eager to build speed, and that's a good thing. I'm a bit missed with the performance of the gearbox, especially when driving around the twisties. Of course, if you're driving around the twisties or on mountain roads, it's a better idea to be in the sport mode. Take manual control over the gearbox using these paddles behind the wheel. But then if you don't, if you rely on the gearbox completely, if you rely on the software, you might often find yourself being in the wrong gear. And that's quite annoying. You come out of a turn and suddenly there's no power. It doesn't power out the way you want it to. It doesn't pounce when you want it to. It pounces when it thinks the time is right to pounce. I think it's taking that cat on the grill rather seriously, behaving exactly like that animal. Now, if I wanted a disobedient pet like that, I would get myself an F-Type. Why would I invest in a family saloon? Speaking of the F-Type, the XC was always benchmarked against the sports car for its ride and handling, and it shows in the kind of feedback you get from the steering and the taut dynamics of this car. The chassis is beginning to feel a bit old now, especially when you benchmark the new XC against the new 3 Series. Even the chatty steering feels cumbersome if you drive it in the dynamic mode for too long. Speaking of which, both the cars get various driving modes, but they only affect steering and throttle response and the shift points. The BMW 3 Series also uses a 2-liter engine, but it's marginally higher on power, a little bit more torquey than the Jaguar XC's motor. But it just makes a world of a difference. The refinement levels, the power delivery, the way the torque is spread out, it all makes a world of a difference. 0 to 100 is about a second quicker. Roll accelerations are almost half a second quicker. It feels 5 seconds quicker in the feel of speed. You know what I mean? Well, if you don't, too bad. Just go drive one of these and you will know what I mean. And you know what is the best part? How do I put it? I hope I can put it in a convincing, easy to understand manner. You know, the engine doesn't feel too eager. It's always calm and composed, but it's also got all the power and torque that you need at the same moment when you need it. It's always there, ready to deliver. And I like this preparedness to deliver than that in-your-face, constant eagerness, trying to live on the edge, trying to be too eager, trying to impress you. All of that's not happening. Nothing here feels pretentious. It just feels very natural, and that is what I love about the way the 3 Series delivers all its power and torque. What is surprising is that both engines are mated to the same VS 8 HP transmission, but their tuning is worlds apart. Munich has managed the tuning so well that the engine, transmission and the chassis feel like one cohesive unit, while the XC just doesn't replicate it as well. And where the 3 Series hits the hammer on the head is the handling dynamics of it. You know, compared to the 3 Series of the past, this one has those very sharp turn-ins, that predictable handling and all of that. And at the same time, it also has an excellent ride quality. So even if you aren't a driving enthusiast, and if you own one of these, you drive one of these, it will make you an enthusiast. And that's the beauty of this car. That's exactly what a BMW 3 Series should be. The 3 Series rides better too, despite the larger wheels and the lower profile tires. The ride gets even cushier in the non-M Sport trims, and that is another plus point for the 3 Series. And speaking of points, it is time now to sum this up. Though the two cars are closely spec'd and the points even mirror that fact, the fly in the ointment is how the India Spec 3 Series has been kitted out. The Jaguar XE, despite its age, feels more modern than the 3 Series with everything that it has to offer inside the cabin, and that is a bit shameful. That said, the 3 Series packs in a lot more feel and enthusiasm, and that makes it more rewarding to drive. That driver-focused nature, along with the points tally, makes it a clear winner of this test.
It's time then for us to check